Bible story of Christmas. I'm going to do a little quiz first about Christmas and what we know and what we think we know. And, you know, there aren't any trick questions, but it's always interesting to me what we think we've heard, what we think we know in the Bible, and then when we really look at it. So let's look through a couple of these, or a few of these. First of all, who told Mary and Joseph to go to Bethlehem?
I don't know.
No,
Caesar Augustus.
I was going to say, the thing is, no angel or anybody told me, but because the government said he had to go to his house that his family was from. Because angels do everything else, we would assume it had been an angel. True or false, Mary and Joseph went to Bethlehem for the birth of Jesus because they were following a star. False. I know these are kind of silly, but what form of transportation did Mary and Joseph use to get to Bethlehem?
A donkey.
The paper this Sunday said it's not clear in the Bible what they used.
It doesn't say. We always, what do we see in the pictures? We see this big old pregnant Mary on the donkey and the faithful Joseph walking along beside, you know. But it doesn't say. But we've put it into our own thoughts so often. Which Old Testament prophet had the most to say about the birth of Jesus? You may not know that one. Isaiah talks about a lot. In the accounts announcing the birth of Jesus, Matthew 1 and Luke 1 and 2, how many times did an angel or angels appear? Again, unless you're sitting and thinking about looking at it, that could go 3 different times. And hopefully we'll work through that. Then you get into this whole thing of what are angels? You know, how did they get there? Who sent them? God sent them. But who told Joseph the baby's name was to be Jesus?
An angel.
An angel. We usually want to say Gabe, as Mike said in Sunday with the kids, Gabriel, but it doesn't say. It just says an angel appeared to him. The shepherds and the wise men went to see Jesus. Which group followed a star, and which group went to find the baby because an angel told them where to look? Who followed the star?
The wise men.
The wise men and the magi. And the shepherds went because the angel said go. You know, if you do any study on what shepherds were like at that time, they were like the ruffians. They stayed out with the sheep and nobody wanted them to come into town, partly because they smelled so bad. I think it's just interesting that God used that group of people in that particular account. And none of this is meant to put down anything we believed or thought about Christmas, just think about it. Let's skip on down to 11. When the shepherds went looking for Jesus, what was the sign they were to look for?
Baby in a manger. I said a baby in a manger.
A baby wrapped in swaddling clothes. Now, I've always gotten tickled because then it says they went and they found Mary, Joseph, and the baby lying in a manger. And for the longest time when I was a kid, I thought it must be like a king-size manger because I read that as all everybody being in the manger, but that's just my little weirdness. How many wise men or kings or magi came to see Jesus?
3. My manger has 3.
Does it say, or does it just say they brought 3 gifts?
Scripture doesn't say, but they brought 3 gifts. That's where it's come up for. And some people have actually given them names. But historically, when groups like that traveled to go see a new king, it would have been a bunch of them. It'd been like when, you know, all the luminaries come for a funeral or for something, an inauguration all from all the different countries. But because of the 3 gifts, we've always kind of been taught or thought it was that. Matthew 2:8 says, Herod asked the wise men to inform him where the baby Jesus was. What does this verse say? Why does this verse say he wanted to know? Why did Herod want to know where the baby Jesus was? According to his words. He said he wanted to worship him. Duh. Not even. I have to tell you, when I first came into MCC, inclusive language was a raging battle. And so the question is, what do you call these 3 people? Because they didn't want to say men, so it was wise ones. I always said wise guys, which didn't help a whole lot either. So magi sometimes covers it. How old was Jesus when the wise men found him?
You don't know. We don't know.
Again, we don't know. But why did you say 2?
I thought they said it took 2 years or something like that to find it.
Well, actually, Herod put out a decree that babies 2 and under had to be killed. What's interesting, and we'll talk about this later on, is when it says the wise men came, they didn't go to the stable. Forget your Christmas play. They didn't go to the stable. It says they found them in a house. So there's obviously been some time through there. What 3 gifts are mentioned being given by the wise men? Are you thinking about that cartoon, aren't you? There's a cartoon that says gold, myrrh, and who's this? And somebody brought Frankenstein. Frankincense. And there's all kinds of interpretations about what those meant, what those signified. The biggest part of that is it gave Mary and Joseph the money to flee to Egypt. Gave them the means for that. What animals does the Bible say were present at the birth of Jesus? Not a rhino. What animals does the Bible say were present at the birth of Jesus?
Oh, I know a donkey, well, a donkey for sure.
No, it doesn't say a donkey.
Well,
Yeah,
that's not like, not for
Yeah.
sure, but.
Cat alone with 4 baby wings.
Yeah, and the song is in Caroline. It doesn't say. It doesn't say. Isn't it interesting how we've expanded the story? We'll talk about why it didn't
It's the
say.
Baptist, they lie all the time. It's the Baptist, they lie all the time.
Actually, you know, it's Catholics that did the biggest nativity scenes and stuff. Uh-huh. What was the name of the unkind innkeeper who would not allow the pregnant Mary to lodge in his inn?
Mark. I have no idea.
It doesn't give a name, and in fact, when we look at the story a little bit, there's not an innkeeper standing at the door saying, "You can't stay here, we're full." But that's what we've assumed from this. Let me tell you something about shepherds when we're finished. What is the name of the priest who was told he would not die until he saw the Savior? Simeon and Anna. We'll talk about that. It's my favorite part of the Episcopal service. When I first went to the Episcopal church, they had this thing called the Nunc Dimittis, and they would quote this thing, and I know where that's from. They didn't know all those responses were from Scripture. So I was real excited about that.
What was the name again of the
His name is Simeon. Simeon and Anna.
Okay.
We'll look at their story in Luke. 2 of the 4 Gospels do not mention the birth of Christ at all. Which 2?
Mark and John.
Mark and John. And this week or next week we'll talk about why. One of the things that I love finding out new things and realizing new things. When you think of shepherds, describe a shepherd for me. What would a shepherd in this scene look like?
Stinky.
Stinky, okay.
Yeah, nasty clothes and probably a long.
Often towels around their head and stuff. And they were men, right? Do you know in the Bible, the only shepherds that are named other than David were women? Rebecca, when Jacob was looking for a wife, he came up and she was tending the sheep. And then there's Zipporah, who was Moses' future wife, and guess what she was doing? Tending sheep. But we always think they're shepherds. I always said I couldn't be a shepherd or a shepherd because I didn't have the right bathrobe. You know, the boys always wore those bathrobes. Well, they're just fascinating to think about how our concept of how things are and what was really there. Tell me about the first Christmas play, you know, Mary and Joseph stuff. Can you remember the first one you ever saw or were in? Were you in one? Anybody here in a Christmas play? Jean, what were you?
I always had a loud voice, so I always got to do the talking.
I did too. They wouldn't let me be Mary. They wouldn't let me be an angel. They wouldn't let me be a shepherd.
Yep.
Nelson, what were you?
A shepherd.
A shepherd. Kelly?
Shepherd.
Oh, you got to be a shepherd. And it's something that we do very early on. I have a Bible in my office that I've used to read. I still have the markings in that Bible when I had to read the parts. If you look at these 2 Gospels, and we're going to look at them for just a little bit, and I'm using the NIV tonight because the King James is just a little much for me, but the Message gets it kind of a little bit different too. Turn to Matthew chapter 1. My friend Laura's going to be coming the weekend after next, and she'll hate that I told you this story. I used to have this whole big set of Bible on cassettes, and had them in one of those, remember those old cassette wooden things that you put them in slots? She knocked them all off one day, and I was not happy. And she knew I wasn't happy, and she looked at me, she says, I don't even know what comes before Matthew. No, I don't even know what comes after Malachi. And I said, Matthew. So, Matthew, the first book of the New Testament. If you look at this first chunk, and we're not going to at all read all those first 14 verses or so, 16 verses. What is that all about? Those first 16 verses of Matthew 1. Genealogy of Jesus. And with whom does it start in verse 2?
Abraham.
Abraham. And it goes all the way up to Joseph. You can get into all sort of things to be tracking about this, about why they had certain people, why they didn't have other people. But in this genealogy, it goes back to Abraham, to the beginning of Judaism. It also tracks through Joseph. Now, we know that Joseph was not Jesus' quote-unquote real father, but that's who's used in the Gospel of Matthew. Why would Matthew, first of all, use Joseph, and why would he take it all the way back to Abraham? A little bit of background. Matthew was written to Jewish Christians. Both of these Gospels were written in the first century, but they were not written. They didn't sit down at a table and Matthew said, I'll write this part. Luke said, I'll write this part. But they were not written together. But Matthew was written to those early Christians who came from a Jewish background. And he was trying to show that Jesus was the fulfillment of all those prophecies. If you have a book or a Bible, or you Google Old Testament prophecies of Jesus, there's tons of them. And he was trying to make legitimate that that was happening. Now, one of the reasons for this, in the first century when he was writing this, and you have to understand the Gospels weren't written until about the 60s or 70s, okay, or even later. They didn't write it down because it didn't matter. They thought Jesus was coming back real soon. Also, I always find it interesting is who told them all this stuff? If Mary was even 15 when Jesus was born, okay? So by AD 70, she'd have been 85. Again, not trying to rattle your cage, just think about it. So they didn't write it down because that wasn't important. The epistles from Paul were written way before this. But he's writing to these Jewish people who are now Christians. And at this point, Jerusalem has been torn down. The Romans have torn down the temple. They're feeling kind of bereft and adrift. The things they had counted on aren't there. And the Romans are getting tighter and tighter in their control. So Matthew's trying to say, hey, this Jesus was real. He really was one of us. He really was one here to help us put things back together. So he's writing to Jewish people, and he spends a lot of time connecting the Old Testament prophecies. If you look on in chapter 1, first of all, the main character in this story is Joseph. We're going to look at these verses and think about it in your mind, picture that nativity scene. Look who's missing or not in this account. Verse 18, this is how the birth of Jesus the Messiah came about. His mother Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph, and I know you know all this, but hang with me. But before they came together, she was found to be pregnant through the Holy Spirit. Because Joseph, her husband, was faithful to the law and yet did not want to expose her to public disgrace, he had in mind to divorce her quietly. But after he had considered this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins. All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet in Isaiah. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. When Joseph woke up, he did what the angel of the Lord had commanded him, and he took Mary home as his wife, but he did not consummate their marriage until she gave birth to a son and give him the name Jesus. So far, it's kind of an empty tableau, and it's pretty much Joseph, and Joseph agreeing to do what needs to be done. Chapter 2, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." Okay, so now we've got Joseph saying, "Okay, I'll make her my wife. We'll have the kid." And now they're waiting on the Magi. What's missing from your typical Christmas play?
Bethlehem.
Bethlehem. There's no manger, there's no shepherds, there's no angels singing. And again, we'll talk about in a minute why that is in Luke. But Matthew was trying to say this is really the Messiah. And all that stuff in Luke we'll talk about was a little bit out of the step for that. Joseph's the main character. Also, you see here that he is led by dreams. Do you think of anybody else in the Old Testament who was led by dreams?
The Old Testament.
You know, Jacob had a dream, the angels going up and down the ladder, several times. And then in the New Testament,
Something was a dream. Someone told, the king dreamed and the guy told him what the dream meant. Something.
yeah, Nebuchadnezzar, that kind of thing, yeah. And then, of course, in the New Testament, you have Peter and the cloth with all the stuff that was okay to eat. But he's with this dream idea. So now, ever how it happened, Mary's had the baby, and they've gone home. Home was not Bethlehem. Where was Joseph from? Do you remember? Nazareth. You're doing good. Nazareth. So when King Herod heard he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "In Bethlehem in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judea, you are by no means the least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." One of the things that always catches my attention here is he asked them where the baby was to be born, and they said in Bethlehem. Now, folks have been waiting 2,000 years for the Messiah, right? If you knew that Jesus was coming back, and he was going to be coming back in Vinton, and all of the things were coming about that sound like it'd be the time for him to come, where would you think about hanging out?
Yeah.
In Vinton. But they had to really study to find out that this was Bethlehem, where it was. Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me, so I too may go and worship him." Can you hear the tongue-in-cheek? Herod is the king. Herod's the leader, especially put there by the Romans. How excited is he going to be about a new king that's not his son? They'd heard the king, they went on their way, and the star that seen had rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. Now in our Christmas cards, and in our Christmas pictures, where is that star? Hanging over the manger, right? Let's see if it says that. It says where the child was, not where he was born. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. The Living Bible, which I often quote, says their joy knew no bounds. I love that phrase. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. Again, this Old Testament concept of God coming to people in dreams is what Matthew shares in the story here. The Magi come to a house, and there's people that know more about Greek than I do that say when they saw the child. In Luke, it always talks about the baby. So some people have said that meant the child was a toddler as opposed to an infant. And they went home by another route. Why? The dream had told them, do you believe everything you have in a dream? I hope not. I've had 3 dreams about a particular incident, and I'm still a little leery that might show up and happen sometime. I think that it was not just, Magi were not stupid people. They were learned people. Whether you want to say they were astrologers or they were learned in some other field, they were smart people. And I can't help but believe they saw through Herod's act. And they knew enough to know what was going on. You know, politics even then. And so they take off and go back another way. Not quite finished with the story of Matthew yet. Because if this Jesus story is going to continue, if they had stayed in Nazareth, what would have happened? Jesus would have been killed. The baby Jesus would have been killed. But there's a whole lot more story to tell here. That can't happen yet. The Magi had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. Get up, take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him. And again, the obedience here blows me away. He didn't check his agenda. He didn't check his schedule. He didn't check what the route was like. He didn't check what the traffic was like. He got up, took the child and his mother, and during the night and left for Egypt, where he stayed until the death of Herod. And so was fulfilled what the Lord had said through the prophet, again, out of Egypt I called my son. Matthew was really trying to show here the fullness.
Is that your pen? You sound like the lady on Google Maps.
Did you find anything on the web for? I wasn't looking for anything on the web. Okay.
Did a butt search.
Okay, whew, calm down. Trying to show that Jesus was the fulfillment of these prophecies and that he was the David out of Bethlehem. Now, one of the things that I'd not realized until I was doing some study this time is Matthew was writing to the oppressed people, the Jewish people who'd been under Roman domination for years and years and years. And it was still continuing when Jesus was teaching and out and being around. Is there anything in this Matthew story that hits you funny, weird, wrong, or good? Yeah.
So they're following a star, and they drop in on the king to say, where is this baby that we're following a star for? And the scholars say, oh, well, he's going to be born in Bethlehem. And then they continue to follow the star, never mind the directions, because the star took them to Jesus' house, not Bethlehem.
So why did they stop? Is that what you're saying?
Why did they stop and why mention Bethlehem at all if that's not where they were headed? They were heading to his house. They didn't know they were heading to his house, but you know.
Yeah. Well, Bethlehem they had to put in to make sure they realized he was at the house and lineage of David. But what always bothered me, if they're following the star, unless the star just stopped over Jerusalem, it would make sense for them to check in with the king if there's a newborn king. They expected to walk into Herod and see a baby and, baby shower stuff and diapers and whatever. But my question is, did the star literally stop? And you get it all kinds of things. Was it Halley's Comet? Was it this? Some of those things you see on the History Channel. But it made sense to me why sometimes your human inclination or knowledge can pull you off base. Because their human education and knowledge said, he's got to be in that temple, that palace there in Jerusalem. The good thing is, they kept following the star. And whether it made sense or not, they kept following the star. Now, the reason I brought up this thing about Matthew writing to the oppressed is because when we look at Luke in a few minutes, Luke was writing to a whole different person. If you have your Bible, turn over to Acts chapter 1. See, how we get out of Jesus all the way to Acts? You know, Luke wrote the Gospel of Luke, and he also wrote the book of Acts of the Apostles. And we find out in Acts 1 to whom he wrote these books, because his gospel wasn't addressed to anybody. But he says, in my former book, Theophilus, I wrote about all that Jesus began to do and teach until the day he was taken up into heaven. So the first gospel, the first book that Luke wrote, the former book, was the gospel telling all about Jesus. But who's this guy, Theophilus? It's thought that he was a leader in the Roman culture who was wanting to know about Jesus and about the early church. And so Luke was telling him the Jesus story. So instead of like Matthew writing to the oppressed, he wrote to an oppressor. Now, Theophilus himself may not have been out there cracking the whip, but he was part of that government. He was part of that culture. And that's why I think we'll see the story is told a little bit differently. Matthew was writing to his folks. Somebody comes up to you and wants to know about this church, not the building, MCCPR. What's something you think about before you start talking about it? Anything? Is there any checklist you kind of go through or filter you think about? Might it depend on who's asking? If I know that the Diversity Center has sent someone up to ask about the church, what am I going to be telling them specifically?
Open and affirming.
Open and affirming for everybody. Christian church, open and affirming to everybody. Somebody stops me out on the street and they say, I see people coming in and out of that church. What kind of church is that?
Christian.
I start out with as a Christian church with a special outreach to everyone. I used to say with a special outreach to the gay and lesbian community, but that was years ago. That G&L only. Matthew was telling his story to people that he could relate to, and they could relate to how he was telling it. Now Luke is talking to a whole different group of people. He's talking to Roman and Greek people who don't have all that Isaiah stuff, if you will, to refer to. But now Luke is writing to a whole different group of people than Matthew was. Writing about the same time. Go back to Luke chapter 1. Have you ever thought about any of these discrepancies? Have you ever wondered why it was different stories in different places? I like the fact that we've blended them in our telling of the story. I would not want to have Mary, Joseph, and the babe in the stable and wait 2 years to come back and reenact the wise men coming to the house. But in Luke chapter 1, he starts out with not getting nearly as into the genealogy as the other people. And it's interesting, his introduction, realizing that he's writing to people who don't have the Jewish background. Many have undertaken to draw up an account of the things that have been fulfilled among us, just as they were handed down to us by those from the who were the first eyewitnesses and servants of the word. I like the fact there he's saying, I wasn't at the manger. I'm going on what I've been told. With this in mind, since I myself have carefully investigated everything from the beginning, I too decided to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know the certainty of the things you've been taught. I like the honesty of that. I want you to understand, because you know, eventually the Jewish Christians and the Roman Christians ended up together sometimes. And I'm sure just like if you get Presbyterian and Baptist and Episcopalian and a Catholic together, there are things you're going to be thinking and hearing differently. So he starts off, Luke starts off not even at the manger. He starts off talking about these other people first, because he spends time talking about John the Baptist. He spends a good bit of time talking about John the Baptist. I'm not going to read all of it out loud. But you know, Elizabeth was, notice he says, Zechariah, who belonged to the priestly division of Abijah, and his wife Elizabeth, who was also a descendant of Aaron, both of them all observing all the Lord's commands and decrees blamelessly, but they were childless. It's a great story, you know, how they, and you know, we've talked before, if a woman in the Hebrew faith was childless, that meant somebody sinned. Something wasn't right. So Zechariah gets to go into the temple one time in his lifetime to work at the altar in the Holy of Holies. It was a great honor to get to do that. Great honor to get to do that. And he gets chosen by lot. Makes me wonder that gambling can't be all that bad. And everybody was praying outside, and an angel of the Lord appears. Zechariah doesn't have a dream. An angel appears to him. He was startled, he was gripped with fear. Well, yeah. The angel said, "Don't be afraid, Zechariah. Your prayers have been heard. Your wife Elizabeth will bear a son, and you're to call him John. He'll be a joy and delight to you, and many will rejoice because of his birth, because he will be great in the sight of the Lord." He goes on and talks about how John was going to be raised. And the last part of verse 17, to make ready a people prepared for the Lord. Now, if you've read anything in the Bible, if you look at any of that genealogy in Matthew, John is not a common Bible name. It wasn't a common name then. And it wasn't a favorite name at that time. Because just like John now, if somebody talks about John Doe, that means they didn't know the name. John Smith, somebody's making up their name. And Zechariah, as any of us would have done, says, "Excuse me, don't you realize I'm old and my wife is old?" And the angel said, "I'm Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God. I've been sent to speak to you." Outside, the people are waiting on Zechariah. He's been in there too long. He should have come out by now. When he came out, he could not speak to them. They realized he had seen a vision in the temple, for he kept making signs to them, but remained unable to speak. Can I explain what happened? First, I think he was scared into some sort of verbal catatonic situation. When it was completed, he went home. His wife Elizabeth became pregnant, and for 5 months remained in seclusion. Why did she hide out for 5 months?
Probably afraid something may happen to her. I would be, if I was older.
That old?
Yeah.
Yeah, she may have been waiting and making sure that things were going to move along. You know, a lot of people don't want to tell you anything during the first trimester in case something happens. I wonder if she also was in disbelief herself and thinking, can this really be happening? Can this really be happening? The 6th month of her pregnancy, Gabriel goes to a town in Galilee and begins talking to Mary. You read that. I love the Magnificat it's called when she sings to God. But Mary goes to visit Elizabeth in verse 39. At that time, Mary, after the angel has said, "You're going to be pregnant." That time, Mary got ready and hurried to a town in the hill country of Judea, where she entered Zechariah's home and greeted Elizabeth. When Elizabeth heard Mary's greeting, the baby leaped in her womb, and Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Spirit. In a loud voice she exclaimed, "Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the child you will bear. But why am I so favored that the mother of my Lord should come to me? As soon as the sound of your greeting reached my ears, the baby in my womb leaped for joy. Blessed is she who has believed that her Lord would fulfill his promises to her." It's kind of different. She knows she's pregnant. It's not unusual by the 6th month, from what I've been told. I have no idea personally. You all might. To feel a baby moving and kicking. But there was something about Mary's voice and God through Mary that touched this baby. And again, hear how Elizabeth is even saying in a servitude attitude. Elizabeth isn't thinking she's going to have the Messiah. Sometime when you have a chance in the quiet, read Mary's song. You may have heard it sung. She stays there with Elizabeth for about 3 months and then returns home. She got there in the 6th month and she stayed 3 months. What do you reckon might have happened while she was still there? 3, 6, 9, boom. John may have been born, but we're not told that. Why is it not said if that's what happened? Because it wouldn't fit into the rest of the story. John's not the most important been telling about it. So they follow the rules. Even these people who are being used by God in a special way, they follow the rules. And in the Jewish family, when a child is 8 days old, they go for what? To be circumcised. To be circumcised. When I was in Sunday school, we used to give the teachers quarterly so we could read ahead. And this was in both the Old Testament and this one. We figured out what circumcised meant, but we didn't think she'd have the nerve to tell us. So she's teaching us, we kept going, what's that? What are they doing? She was just mortified, just mortified. And so this is also the time when they announced the baby's name. And Zechariah spoke up, his mother spoke up and said, no, he's to be called John. They said to her, there's no one among your relatives who has that name. Don't you wonder where they got your name? Sometimes we know. Sometimes you wonder, where did they come up with that? So they made signs to the father to find out what he'd like to name the child. And he said his name is John. And immediately what happened?
He could speak.
His mouth opened. He could start speaking. Everybody's standing around with their mouth hanging open. And then they began to realize something's going to be special about this baby. And again, sometime read Zechariah's story. So let's talk for just a minute. Why does Luke, couldn't we just go from, I'm telling you what I heard about Jesus and here's the baby. Why does he go through this whole thing about John in his first chapter? Some of it, I keep thinking my glasses are up here. Some of it is to set the stage because John the Baptist is going to be very important in the ministry of Jesus. Some of it is to let people know because at that time, and I know you've heard me say this before, there were a lot of people claiming to be the Messiah. There were a lot of people who said, my son is going to be the Messiah. And so he made it very clear that even though this baby was born in very unusual circumstances, he was the one to prepare the way for the one. And by the time these were written, lots of stories had gone around about all this stuff. And so Luke is trying to be very clear to put it into chronological context and also into leadership context. And verse 80 simply says, the child grew and became strong in spirit and lived in the wilderness until he appeared publicly to Israel. There's a lot missing out of that paragraph, out of that sentence. We do know he was strong in spirit because he was out calling down wrath on people that didn't repent. And I've always wondered, why didn't he go into the priesthood? His father was a priest, and the sons of priests often became priests. But he took a different path. So you've got these Jewish customs that are so important, and we'll be seeing even those in the life of Jesus. We're going to wait till next week to walk through Luke 2. You have some idea kind of what to look for now, because read it carefully. Because what we think is there isn't necessarily there. And does it matter? No, you can have any idea you want. But it's important to see why Luke, writing to a Roman leader, tells and leaves out certain parts. Think about that. If he's writing to someone who's been an oppressor, how does he leave out? And why does he leave out certain parts? And why does he get so specific about other parts? You know, if we had to do the Christmas play based on Matthew, it'd be kind of weird. But Luke gives us a lot of the flavor to it. So next week we'll look at that just a little bit. And I plan to have an Advent candle here to do a little Advent at the end of the service. But that didn't happen. I apologize. I'm a little brain dead scattered these days. But we will think about that next week. Any last minute prayer requests or praises? Just to continue praying for our food pantry. It's amazing to see a pile of gloves and hats at 1 o'clock and step back in here at 3:30 or 4 and see them all gone. And they don't just give them out frivolously because people need them. I encourage people to come hang out sometime on a Thursday to see not the logistics of how the food pantry, but the people that come in and what they say and the fact they have real needs. And I continue to be so impressed with how Susan and her helpers treat the people with dignity. They don't just hand them a bag of food and say, here. They talk to them, They take them back there and say, you can have one off this shelf, you can have one off this shelf, and that way people get what they'll really need. And the miracles that happen through that, the miracles that happen through that. Loving God, we thank you for your love and your mercy. We thank you for all the ways you bless us. We thank you that we have this Christmas story and all of its ins and outs and back and forth to remind us that you were willing to come to earth as an infant and to live through all the toddler and young adult and kid and all the things that we've gone through so you could understand what we go through. Thank you for the people in these stories that were faithful to follow you and to trust your word. As we go into this Christmas season, help us not to get caught up in the busyness, not to get caught up in the, does this look right, is this in the right place? But to keep our hearts and minds and spirits in the right place. In your name we pray.